Okay, hello everyone. This is the final session of our Flutter Festival series, where we are building a complete news app from scratch. And in today's session, we will be integrating Google sign-in using Firebase into our app. So we'll wait a minute and then we'll start. Okay, let's start the session. First and foremost, before writing any business logic, we need to create our login page from where we will be signing in using our Google account. So for that, we will come in the pages folder and create a new uh, sign in page dot and we'll import material dot package and we'll make a stateless widget with the name of sign in page. Now, we also need a file or a widget called wrapper. Now, what wrapper will do is, let me make it first and then I'll explain it. Now, what wrapper will do is, if user is logged in, then it will show the home page, else it will show the sign in page. So before we write the if user is logged in page, we need to make the sign in page. So for now, we will just return the sign in page from wrapper and we'll pass the wrapper in our main.dart file. Okay. Now we need to make our sign in page, which will contain a scaffold. Inside the scaffold, we'll give a background color of palette.background and we'll give it a body of center, which will take a column, and inside the column we'll have two things: a text and a button. The button takes two named parameters, one on pressed that takes a method that will execute when the button is pressed, and a child. The child will also be a text named Google sign in. Now we need to make it in the center of our app. So we'll write main axis alignment, which is the vertical axis, and in the vertical axis we centered it in the center. We aligned it in the center. Now we also need a small padding inside between the image and the button. We give it a padding of 24. Now we need to style the text, obviously. Now we will give it a color of deep blue with a font size of, let's say, 80, and with a boldness of font bold. Okay, now this is looking nice, but let's test with this one. Okay, this is also looking nice, but we do not need to actually make another text widget for this. We can simply do it here with a new line, that is /n. Now we also need to give a style of our button. The style name parameter takes a style from widget. It is a static function in the elevated button class. Now here we will give it a primary color of white with a shape of rounded rectangular border, which takes a border radius, and all the sides, all the four corners of the border will take a border of, let's say, 100. Now for the text also, we will style it a bit. We'll give it a color of deep blue and a font size of, let's say, 40, with the font weight of bold. Okay, so we are done with the sign-in page. Now let's configure our Firebase. For that, we need to go to Firebase. Then we need to click on Go to Console, and we need to add a new project. The name of the project, let's give it News App. Then we will continue it. For now, we do not want to enable Google Analytics, but if you want, you can also. It will give you various data such as testing, crash analytics, etc. It will take some time to configure its backend resources. Then we hit continue, and it will give us a new project. In this session, we will be configuring our app for Android. So we'll click on Android. Now it is asking Android packaging that we can get from inside our Android folder. We go to app folder, then source, then main, and then Android mainfetch.xml. Here we will copy this one, the package one. Here we will copy this and paste it here. We'll give an optional name of news app. And here we require a SHA-1. Now, what is SHA-1? SHA-1 is Secure Hash Algorithm 1. It creates a unique 20-byte hash. It produces a unique 20-byte hash value. So for creating or getting the SHA-1 of your project, you need to go to terminal, where you need to go to your Android directory. Then you need to write dot forward slash Gradle W signing report, and then you press enter. and then you can get the SHA-1 value from the top. We'll copy this and we'll paste it here. Then click on register app button. Okay, it is saying that this SHA-1 already exists. Okay, let me visit my projects once. Again, we need to uh, get our SHA-1. For that, we need to go to the Android directory. And we need to copy the SHA-1 here. We can see that we have already given the SHA-1 here. Let's just, okay, it has saved the SHA-1. Now we need to click on CSDK instructions. We need to download this Google services.json file. And here you can see that we need to paste it inside our app folder. So we'll open it and we'll open our file and we'll pinpoint our app folder. In this folder, we need to paste the Google services.json file and we'll copy it here. So we can see that it is added in the app directory. Then again, we'll go here, we'll click on next. We will add this line, which adds our Google services dependencies, and here we will give it inside the build script dependencies inside our project build.gradle. There are two build.gradle files. One is inside the app, which is this one, and another inside the Android folder, which is this one. In this case, we need to add the line here inside our build.gradle file, which is present inside our Android directory. Then again, we go here and we copy this one and we need to paste it inside the build.gradle file, which is inside the app module or app directory. It is inside the dependencies, as you can see. So we'll go to the app folder, to the build.gradle folder. We'll find the dependencies. Here we found it and we'll paste it. Also need to paste another line, which is this apply plugin. Then we'll click on next. Continue to console, and we're done. Then we go to authentication. We'll click on get started. In this app, we will be configuring Google sign-in or Google authentication. So we will choose Google, but here you can see other sign-in methods such as Facebook sign-in, Play Store sign-in, GitHub sign-in, Yahoo, Twitter, Microsoft Game Center, Apple, phone, email, and anonymous also. So you can choose any one, or you can choose multiple too. We'll enable this one. We will set it as an email, and we'll save it. Okay, so we are done. Now we need to configure our app to access this backend. For that, you need to go to Flutter Fire Docs, and here you need to install the Firebase CLI, where you can get from here. You need to click on this link, and there you can install the Firebase CLI using a standalone, that is a normal downloading or installing the CLI, or you can use Node.js also. If you do not have Node.js, just install the LTS version, that is long-term supported version. Then we will copy just the npm install command. We will come here inside our terminal, and make sure your app is in the app directory, that is the main directory, and then you will paste it here. It will install the Firebase CLI that is required to add your app to the Firebase backend. Okay, we can see that updated one package, and then we need to copy these commands. One installs the Flutter Fire CLI, and the other configures it. Okay, from here we need to select which project we were working on. So our project's name was News App. We'll select this one, and here we just need Android. So we'll go on iOS and click on spacebar to deselect it. Also, we'll go on spacebar to deselect the. Also, we'll go on web to deselect it using our spacebar. So just Android is selected, and we'll click enter. Okay, so everything is generated successfully. Now we need to install some dependencies or packages. One is Firebase core, another one is Firebase auth, another one is Google sign. Okay, now let's press Control S or fire or flutter.get packages. Okay, so after we have got our packages, we will go to main.dart, and here we need to call the Just a second. Let me write the code and then I'll explain it. Okay. Now, uh, before going on a long trip, what do you ensure or check that your vehicle has enough petrol or not? So now, to understand this, we need to understand a bit how Flutter works in the background. In simple words, let's say Flutter does not run this code in the app, in your operating system, but it converts it to native code and then runs it. That is the reason Flutter is very fast in different operating systems, since it converts this code to native code and then builds and runs the app. Now, some functions such as Firebase.initialize app, this works differently with different operating systems. So what this has to do is this needs to access the native code so that it can configure it itself according to the operating system the app is running on. Now, since it uses the native code, we need to ensure that our native code is being built or it is ready to be accessed. So widgets flutter binding dot ensure initialized just does that. It ensures that yes, the native code is ready to be accessed, it is ready to be worked on, and then we call our Firebase dot initialize app. So this is the simple example. And without using this command, we cannot use any plugin of Firebase. So this must be present in the main app. Now we need to create a notifier that this holds the state. So this will just notify if the user is logged in or not. So let's name it as auth notifier. This will be a class which extends change notifier. It will have two fields: is user logged in, initially set to false, and is loading parameter. We also need the getter functions of these two. Okay. Now we need to get the sign in method. For that also, you do not need to remember anything. Just go to the docs and go to the authentication section. Here, go to overview. In overview, you can see how you can configure it. Nothing special here. We already did that. And go to social auth and go to this one and copy this sign in with Google. We will modify the function. Before that, let's understand each and everything that is written in this function. Okay. Now this first line, that is sign in, Google sign in dot sign in, it pops up the window where you select the email, the Gmail, which you will be using for authentication. Like when you tap on a sign in with Google button, it pops up a window that chooses you that shows you many different emails you were registered in, and asks you which email you want to sign in with. So this function does just that. Then after the user selects which email he or she wants to continue with, it asks for authentication information, and we store it in Google Auth. From Google Auth, we get the access token and ID token, which we store it in OAuth credential. This returns an OAuth credential, and then we sign in with our credentials that we got from here, our Google Auth. Now this line actually signs in our app to the Firebase backend. Now let's configure this function. For now, we do not need to return anything since we do not need the user information as of now. But we need to tell that is loading is true when the sign-in is being initialized, and we need to notify the listeners also. And after the sign-in is done, we need to tell is user logged in is equals to true and is loading to be false. And after that also we need to notify the listeners. Now we also need another function is user logged in init function. Now this whenever our app launches for the first time, we will show our sign-in page. But when the user returns to the app, not the first time, but let's say the second time, the third time, then also we need to check, right, if the user is logged in or not. And if the user is logged in, we will directly navigate the user to the home page. And if the user is not logged in, then we will show him or her the sign-in page or login page. So to check that if the user is logged in or not, we need to create this function. Now here we will give is user logged in to be true if it is logged in, and false if he or she is not logged in. So we can get if the user is logged in or not using a very simple instance of Firebase auth.instance and current user. If current user not equals to null, then we set is user logged in to be true, else we'll set is user logged in to be false. And we do not need to call the notify listener here, since this function will go in the init state function. And in the previous session, I explained why you do not need to call the notify listener here. In this session also, I will briefly tell. Since this function will go in the init state function, and the init state function is called whenever that particular widget is being first rebuilt. So calling and notify listeners also tells the widget to rebuild. So calling two times rebuild or build a single widget is not necessary. And for that reason, we do not need to call the notify listeners. You can call, but it is not necessary. Flutter will throw an error here or exception. Now we can also give it just as that we can clean our code, and we can just write is user logged in to be equals to current user not equals to null. If it is not equals to null, then is user logged in will be true, and we'll directly navigate the user to the home page. And if it is false, then we will navigate the user to the login page. Okay, now we will use these functions. Also, apart from these, we also need a sign out function. That will sign out from our Google account also, and we need to sign out from our Firebase account also. Is user logged in? Now we need to make it false, and then we need to notify it. Okay, let's use these functions. We will go to our wrapper, change it to a stateful widget since we need the init state function. Here we will call our we need to import the provider package, And here we will call our is user logged in init function. We also need a consumer here. We'll get to the error in just a second. Let's make the consumer first. Consumer of auth notifier that takes the context, a notifier, and a child. And if notifier dot is user logged in is true, then we'll return our home page. Else, we'll return our sign in page. Now, why is this error coming? As we learned in our state management session, we need to pass the state management in the main function or in a function that has the scope of that widget. Here, our widget is wrapper, where we want our auth notifier to be present. So the parent of wrapper is main. So we need to pass our auth notifier like we passed it here, the news notifier here in the main function. So we will write a change notifier provider that creates the notifier, and here we need to give the auth notifier. Let's rerun it. Okay, so an error is showing that no Firebase app default has been called. Let's go to our main function, and I believe we missed some configuration setups here. Let's check that out once again. Okay, so we didn't add our Firebase core plugin. We'll once again get the packages here. Okay, so most probably, sometimes the Google sign-in package doesn't sit together well with the Firebase core and Firebase auth packages. The issue is still persisting, as we can see. Okay, let's test it out with a new project. Okay, so the issue is with the configuration process. We need to change that. So for that, we need to go to our Firebase console. Uh, we have to delete the existing project, or we can just okay. So the issue was just with the Google services.json package. After we download the most latest Google services.json package, it is working. Now we are using this function to check if the user is logged in or not. Since our user is not logged in, it is showing us the sign in page. Now to log in the user, we need to go to the sign in page, and on the on pressed function, we need to uh, call the sign in with Google function. Before that, we need to call the provider package so that we can access our function. And in Google. But before this, we also need to do some more configuration or change. Here we need a consumer that takes an auth notifier, and inside the builder we will create that takes a function. Now, if notifier.is loading, then we'll return a circular progress indicator. Else, we'll return our button. Now, why is this being done? First of all, to show that one, that the Google sign-in is in process, so don't do anything. And number two, also to avoid accidental clicks. Let's say if we didn't provide this circular indicator and the user clicked multiple times on Google sign-in while it is being initialized, it would have been initialized multiple times. Although Firebase handles this request in the backend. Even if there are multiple requests, it will just take on single request and perform that, then take the next request. But still, now we'll press on Google sign in. Before that, let's just check our notifier class once again. Okay. We probably need to restart our app. Okay. So our Google sign in has started. We will allow it. And since there was just a single account here, we were directly logged in to the app. Now we also need to make a button for logout. So we'll make a button here. For that, we need to go to our, and also we will check that even if we rerun the app, it stays on the home page or not. Okay, so this function is also working correctly. Now go to our home page, and inside the app bar, we'll give actions and we'll give an icon button that takes an on pressed and an icon named parameter. This will be an icon with the logout with color of deep blue and size default. And when it is pressed, we will sign out from our app. Let's rebuild the app and test once again. So we click here and we are signed out. We are logged out from the app. Okay. Let's again test the Google sign in. Pops out the window. Let's choose the email. Let's choose this one. Okay. So Google sign in is working perfectly. And after that, if you come to your project in the Firebase console and you go to the authentication tab, then you can see which email you used to sign in with. So we can see here two users. We signed in with two different users. The couple of times we signed in. Okay. So we are done with the Firebase integration. We are done with the Firebase integration. Usually Flutter and Firebase works really well hand in hand, but after the updates, the configuration process has become a bit more lengthy than it was before that. And this was the last session of our Flutter Festival events. In the 5 sessions we had, we learned about, in the first 2 sessions, we learned about creating the UI. In the third session, we learned about API integration with the DIO package. In the fourth session, we learned about state management using the provider state management. And in this final session, we learned about Firebase integration, Firebase authentication integration, Google sign-in using Firebase and integrating into our Flutter app. And thank you guys so much for being present in these sessions. And I'll be ending the stream now.